What up, YouTube? This is JRJuggernaut1. Sorry I haven't made a video in a few days, but yeah, here's another one. I'm gonna have another daily discussion, or I should say, two new daily discussions on two different decks that are somewhat overlooked, not so much underrated, more so overlooked. Uh, and yeah, I'm gonna be talking about those. Now, first off, two things I want to talk about first. Number one. My friend and I, or my teammate and I, we're gonna start doing some like kind of individual card reviews. Yeah, he kind of wanted to contribute, so he's gonna be helping me do reviews of certain cards. I wouldn't call it like a card of the day kind of thing. It's probably gonna be more like every, I don't know, like some amount of days during the week we're going to be reviewing cards. And yeah, we'll just kind of give an in-depth, analysis on it. The reviews are going to be based more on personal experience for some of them, but I think it'll be pretty. We'll pretty much be agreeing with what most people say about this card, I guess. Um, also, what was the second thing I want to say? Oh yeah. Also, I noticed people have been really liking the last duel video that I posted from my local, so I'm going to be trying and make more of those. The the players are pretty good there, and I may also try and make videos at my more videos at my other locals when I get the chance. Yeah, I go to like 3 different places, so it can be a little tricky, but I should be able to make videos at all of them, I guess. We'll see what happens. Um, so yeah, on to the daily discussion. Today we're going to be talking about the Frog Monarch deck. You saw my friend Alex running the deck uh, in that duel video I posted. It's actually a very solid deck. Now, you guys might have heard uh, about a guy who was using the deck at the YCS Championships in May, and you might have heard this. I heard this from Underworld 6667, but he said that the guy who was running it and who made it to the top 32 only lost because of a bad ruling. Yeah, that really pisses me off, to be honest. Apparently, the judge ruled falsely that Swap Frog's effect can only be used to like bounce himself back, or like you can only use it to bounce a frog, and you can only summon a frog. You can only oh no, he falsely said you can only bounce a frog back to your hand, which is not true. You are allowed to bounce any monster you wish. The only catch is if you get an extra summon, you're only allowed to summon a frog out of it. But the judge was an idiot clearly and said something else. Oh God. I mean, whatever drugs he was on, I don't want to know. But point being, this guy should have made it much farther than he did. Why do I say this, you ask? Well, this guy apparently only lost 2 games. He went undefeated in all 10 rounds and lost 2 games. That means 8 matches. 8 of his matches were 2-0 victories. Wow. I mean, I know only one person did really well today, but I'm just saying it really shows how good the deck can be. I think it's a very good deck, and I think more people are going to start running it because the deck is pretty cool, and it's a great way of using the Monarchs, in my opinion. Or I should say, tribute monsters. I mean, the frogs just swarm the field like crazy, making it very easy for you to use your Monarchs or any sort of tribute monster that you wish. In fact, thanks to this deck, Jinzo is now getting even more play. I mean, and I should say more play than like, I mean, yeah, people use him in Machina gadgets, but now in this deck he actually stays on the field for more than a turn. That's pretty impressive. Um, and the deck itself is pretty straightforward if you ask me. I mean, to be fair, it does require skill, but at the same time, the strategy of getting all your frogs in the graveyard pretty straightforward and pretty simple. You just got to get all your dump all your frogs in the grave with Subtoad, Swap Frog, and then you're just going to keep drawing either Monarchs or your spells, or if you're traps if you're running any. Most of the people I see, the only trap they actually run, I believe, is the Spirit Art, the Water one, and Dust Tornado to deal with spells and traps. The deck is just, oh yeah, and Trap Dust Shoot and Mind Crush, can't forget those. The deck, though, itself, my god, it's freaking abusive. I mean, I faced it yesterday, and this is one of the main reasons I'm talking about it now. The deck is so good, it's ridiculous. I mean, just... Now, why is it ridiculous, people ask? I think it's because of the fact that the Monarchs have such great effects. Partially. I think that's a big part of it. The fact is, the only way to actually deal with the effects of the Monarchs is if you actually negate the summon, negate the effect, and yeah, that's pretty much it. You have to pretty much, you can't just let it be summoned, the effect's still going to work. You could always torrential, and you know, if your opponent, like let's say, tries to remove your monster with Caius or Ryza, but still, it's the fact is your opponent's still getting a great summon off and is going to screw you over somehow. But regardless, the deck just runs very smoothly, and it also gives you the opportunity to use other cards, other tribute monsters, such as Light and Darkness Dragon, Jinzo, like I said, and even Dark Dust Spirit, which I'm surprised really works. You might have heard of it because it came out a long time ago. It's a zombie monster that when it's summoned destroys all other monsters on the field, and then it returns to your hand at the end phase. That's pretty good, actually. Only problem is you gotta be careful to make sure your opponent, you know, doesn't kill you the next turn, but I like it. Other thing that's really annoying about this deck is pretty much made to stop OTKs. Why? Because it doesn't really run many traps. It doesn't have a lot of protection because then if you have any spells or traps on the field, you can't revive Treeborn Frog, which of course sucks. So that's why they run cards like Battle Fader, Tragodia, and Gores. It's a pain in the ass to deal with, and that's one of the reasons why it bugs the hell out of me. But it's a legitimately good deck and a deck that definitely takes skill to run. I definitely think more people, again, I definitely think people are going to run this more because, well, for the most part, I believe it's kind of a budget deck. All the frogs are pretty easy to get because Treeborn Frog was released as a common, I believe, in Gold Series 2. So making it shouldn't be that hard. The Monarchs, I mean, they might be a bit tricky, as well as like Light and Darkness Dragon and Battle Fader, but I mean, still, you don't. I think the only thing that's really worth that much money is probably the Battle Faders. Other than that, this is a pretty easy deck to build, unlike Infernities, which will probably cost you all of your allowance and way more. But yeah. So yeah, that's Frog Monarchs for you. How do I recommend you deal with this deck, you might ask? Well, unfortunately, people don't really think of how to side against this deck. While there are many ways of approaching it, you can do what I do, which is side in 2 crevices from the different dimension, which will remove the frogs from graveyard so your opponent doesn't have anything to tribute. But even then, your opponent can still get around that with cards like Soul Exchange, an enemy controller. You can also go a risky route, which is use Mask of Restrict, which nobody sides, but it does kill their deck in a way because it prevents them from tributing their monsters. However, of course, your opponent can just clear it with Dust Tornado or some kind of spell and trap hate, and you still have to find a way to draw it immediately. So yeah, it's pretty iffy. Overall, I say this deck is very, but again, overall this deck is good. Is it invincible? No, there are ways to deal with it. The best way to probably deal with it is decide into pulling the rugs, as you would with any Monarch deck, just because the Monarchs are the worst thing you have to deal with, quite frankly. You can find a ways to deal with Gores, Tragodia, and Battle Fader, because, you know, those, they save them, but they don't hurt you, really. So, you can just get around those. Just, you know, watch out for this deck. People don't really think of siding in pulling the rugs always, but yeah, after seeing this deck, I'm starting to want to get 2 of them, to be honest. Oh well, what can you do? But yeah, so stay tuned for another review, another daily discussion after this. And this is JRJuggernaut1 signing off.